Have you ever heard of a spiritual law so powerful that when understood it naturally multiplies prosperity? Thomas Troward used to say that the universe operates by exact laws and that most people live in conflict with them simply because they ignore them. Among these laws, there exists one he called the most forgotten of all, the law that makes money, ideas, and opportunities flow effortlessly. When the human mind acts in accordance with it again, prosperity ceases to be a conquest and becomes a consequence. Before we dive into this secret, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Here we explore the original principles of the creative mind taught by Thomas Troward, the thinker who united science, spirituality, and purpose. He affirmed that man does not create prosperity, he merely aligns with the flow that already exists. And it is precisely this forgotten law, simple, exact, and immutable, that defines how much of this flow each person is capable of receiving. Today, you will understand why this truth disappeared from common consciousness and how restoring it can completely change your financial and spiritual life. Thomas Troward said that everything in the universe exists in perfect correspondence. The interior and exterior are exact reflections of one another, like two faces of the same mirror. Therefore, he affirmed that prosperity never begins outside, it is born first in consciousness. The mind that vibrates in wealth inevitably creates circumstances of wealth, while the mind that vibrates in limitation inevitably creates environments of scarcity. He called this the law of mental correspondence, one of the oldest and most forgotten divine laws of humanity. This law states that, as within, so without, as above, so below, everything that exists in the visible world is a projection of an invisible idea, sustained with sufficient force. Therefore, trying to change only appearances is useless. True transformation happens when the interior cause is altered. Troward explained that understanding this law is recovering lost power. The person ceases to be a victim of circumstances and becomes a conscious author of the effects they experience. Prosperity ceases to be luck, effort, or chance. It becomes the mathematical result of a mind that thinks in harmony with the whole. This is the law that multiplies because it returns to man the memory that he is the very source of his good. Thomas Troward explained that the physical world is merely the shadow of the mental world. Nothing can exist in matter without first having been conceived in the mind. Every house, business, or fortune began as an invisible image sustained by someone with sufficient conviction to make it real. This is the silent action of the forgotten law. The invisible shapes the visible. And the clearer and more constant the interior image, the more solid the exterior manifestation becomes. He said that the human mind is a mirror in which the universe contemplates itself to create. What consciousness keeps reflected, life multiplies. If the reflection is of fear, situations of scarcity reproduce themselves. If the reflection is of confidence, good propagates. There are no exceptions. Because the law is neutral, it does not judge, it only replicates the dominant pattern. Therefore, Troward insisted that thinking is the most sacred act of existence. Every thought is a cause that will inevitably produce an effect. And when the person understands that the external world is merely the result of the internal world, they stop blaming destiny and begin to deliberately sow ideas of prosperity. Abundance does not arise from effort, but from coherence between what one thinks, what one feels, and what one believes. Thomas Troward said that the mind is the starting point of all creation. Before money, opportunities, or solutions appear, something needs to be generated on the invisible plane, a mental cause. This cause is a combination of thought, emotion, and belief. When these three elements are aligned, the divine law begins to act automatically. There is no delay, there is no mystery, there is only response. He explained that poverty and prosperity are effects, not fixed conditions. Each is born from a different mental vibration. Scarcity is the result of belief in separation, in limitation, in solitary effort. Abundance is the result of consciousness of unity with the whole, of silent faith that good is constant and infinite. Therefore, he said, you do not conquer prosperity, you express it. The forgotten law is the very law of mental cause. Everything that is maintained in consciousness projects itself in time and space. There are no exceptions, because the universe is a living mind that reproduces the dominant pattern. When the human mind becomes pure enough to sustain only good, life responds with mathematical precision. This is spiritual multiplication. The interior expands, and the exterior merely follows. Thomas Troward taught that divine laws do not need to be created, only recognized and obeyed. They are always active, and each person lives according to the way they use them, consciously or unconsciously. Therefore, the first step to multiplying prosperity is to become aware that you are dealing with a living law. Just as gravity does not fail, the law of mind does not fail either. It responds to everyone, always, without distinction. He recommended 3 simple attitudes to activate this law. First, cultivate serenity, because an agitated mind is a cloudy channel. The flow of abundance only passes through clarity. Second, choose a thought of prosperity and sustain it every day without doubt or haste. And third, feel gratitude even before seeing the results, because gratitude is the sign that the mind has already accepted good as real. Troward said that the constant practice of these 3 steps creates a magnetic field of coherence. And when the mind becomes coherent, the universe automatically reorganizes itself. Ideas emerge, paths open, the right people appear. It is not a miracle, it is spiritual precision. Because, as Troward said, the law does not create, it only reveals what has always been available to those who know how to think. Thomas Troward said that abundance does not need to be created, because it has been flowing forever. The universe is an ocean of living energy in constant movement, and the human being is a channel within this ocean. When the mind is clean, the flow passes freely. When it is obstructed by fear, doubt, or guilt, the flow is interrupted. But the source never dries up. It only awaits for the channel to open again. He compared the mind to a river. You do not need to push the water, just remove the stones. These stones are the limiting beliefs that say, "It is difficult. I do not deserve. It is not for me." Each time these phrases are replaced by declarations of confidence, the riverbed clears a little more. And when the river flows again, prosperity flows naturally. Troward taught that the secret is not in asking, but in allowing. The mind that allows is the mind that trusts. It does not beg, it affirms, feels, and thanks. Permission is the silent prayer of the wise, because it is the recognition that everything has already been provided by divine intelligence. And that is why he said, "Life never withholds anything from those who have learned to let good pass through them." Thomas Troward taught that prosperity is a frequency, and the human mind is its tuner. It is not physical work that creates wealth, but the mental state that sustains it. He said that the mind, when vibrating in harmony with good, becomes magnetic. It attracts the right ideas, the right people, and precise circumstances without effort, only by affinity. This is the multiplication that occurs when consciousness enters into resonance with the divine flow. He explained that the universe does not react to words, but to the emotional vibration that accompanies them. Therefore, repeating phrases of prosperity without feeling is useless. The power lies in feeling prosperous even before the results appear. This sensation sends a vibrational command to the invisible field, and the law responds. True emotion is the seal that authenticates the thought. Troward said, "The universe is deaf to fear and blind to doubt. Only confidence communicates with the law. Therefore, spiritual practice consists of elevating the feeling until peace becomes natural. Peace is the sign that the mind has found the right frequency. And when peace is established, money, opportunities, and abundance begin to multiply by simple correspondence." Thomas Troward affirmed that the law that governs prosperity is as exact as gravity. It does not err, does not forget, and makes no exceptions. Every thought is a cause, and every cause has its effect inevitably. Therefore, he said that the universe does not reward anyone. It only responds. And the response is always proportional to the clarity and constancy of the dominant thought. He compared thought to a mathematical formula. If you apply it correctly, the result is predictable. But if you alter the calculation with fear, doubt, or haste, the result becomes distorted. Prosperity does not depend on chance, but on the exactness with which the mind maintains its spiritual equation. Thought of good plus emotion of faith equals certain manifestation. Troward warned that most people do not harvest results because they change the formula in the middle of the process. One day they trust, the next they fear. One day they affirm, the next they deny. But the law only responds to stable vibration. When thought remains firm, the universe begins to gather in silence all the necessary conditions to materialize the desire. There is no need for haste, the result is already guaranteed by the law. As Troward said, good is as exact as mathematics. The difference lies in who calculates. Thomas Troward said that true prosperity is born from harmony between what one thinks, what one speaks, and what one does. The mind creates the plan, the word confirms it, and action manifests it. When these three levels are in disagreement, the flow is interrupted. Therefore, he taught that the secret is not just thinking positively, but living coherently with the thought one declares. This coherence is what transforms ideas into results. He explained that many annul their own creations by speaking words of doubt right after affirming faith. The subconscious understands this as conflict and pauses the process. But when thought, word, and behavior point in the same direction, the divine law acts without resistance. It is like a straight track. Energy runs free, and the train of abundance arrives with precision. Troward recommended observing daily small actions. Spending with guilt, complaining when paying bills, or speaking ill of money are signs of misalignment. He said, every act is a silent prayer. Therefore, the true spiritualist honors money, blesses their transactions, and keeps the mind clean. When the interior and exterior are in unison, the forgotten law awakens and prosperity multiplies naturally. Thomas Troward affirmed that money is merely the visible shadow of the ordered mind. Where there is clarity, it flows. Where there is confusion, it disperses. Therefore, he said that no one needs to chase after money. What is needed is to organize thought. The mind aligned with divine law naturally creates the right conditions for money to appear at the exact time and in the necessary quantity. He explained that the universe loves order, because order is the reflection of divine intelligence. All mental disorganization, indecision, haste, guilt, produces blockages in the flow of abundance. But when thought is clean, purpose is clear, and feeling is of gratitude, energy begins to move with precision. Money comes as a consequence, not as a goal. It only responds to the silent command of a mind that knows what it wants and trusts the process. Troward said, money is obedient to intelligence. It goes where it is well treated. Treating money well means thinking about it with love and respect, without fear or attachment. It is recognizing that it is an instrument of the law and not the final objective. When money is seen as part of the flow of good and not as something separate from God, it loses the power to generate anxiety. And in that instant, prosperity becomes light, constant, and multiplying. Thomas Troward said that prosperity is natural for those who recognize their unity with the source. Humanity's error is to imagine itself separated from God, asking for what already belongs to it, seeking what is already its own. He explained that the human being is not a beggar before the divine, but a channel through which the infinite mind manifests. And when this recognition becomes constant, limitation ceases to exist. Man ceases to be a beggar and becomes a living expression of eternal abundance. He taught that consciousness of unity is the point where the I and the whole unite. In this state, the person acts, speaks, and thinks in perfect harmony with the universal flow. There is no effort, only spontaneous movement. Money, relationships, and opportunities become reflections of this harmony. Nothing is withheld because nothing is separate. Troward said, the universe is one body. You are a cell of this body. If it is healthy, you are too. When the individual accepts this truth, the mind calms down, anxiety disappears, and the fear of scarcity vanishes. Thought becomes creative again, and good multiplies without interruptions. Because whoever lives in unity with the source does not seek prosperity, they are the very path through which it flows. Thomas Troward taught that resistance is the only enemy of prosperity. Whenever the mind struggles, forces, or fears, it closes the doors of flow. Acceptance, on the contrary, opens all of them. He said that the universe is generous by nature, but can only act fully when man stops resisting and begins to trust. To accept is to allow good to pass freely. It is to release control and let the law work in silence. He explained that accepting is not conforming, but recognizing the perfection of the present moment. When the person becomes irritated with the now, they create a vibration of rejection, and the universe, obedient, keeps them trapped in the same pattern until gratitude returns. But when they look at life and say, everything is well and everything is adjusting, harmony begins to re-establish itself. This attitude of peace is the sign of faith that the law was waiting for to act. Troward said, "Nothing improves under tension." Therefore, he taught that relaxation is a form of prayer. The tranquil mind allows divine intelligence to reorganize circumstances without interference. And the deeper the acceptance, the faster the multiplication comes. Accepting good is authorizing the universe to do its work, and the result is prosperity without effort. Thomas Troward said that prosperity is not an event, it is a continuous state of consciousness. It remains alive to the extent that the mind remembers every day its infinite nature. Therefore, he taught that the most powerful spiritual practice is the conscious repetition of truth. Repeating not out of empty habit, but to re-engrave in the subconscious the certainty of divine supply. Repetition makes faith become automatic, and constant faith keeps the flow open. He recommended 3 daily reminders: divine substance never fails. Good is always in motion toward me. I am the free channel of universal abundance. These simple affirmations clean the mental field and restore attunement with the forgotten law. Over time, the subconscious begins to operate naturally in this new pattern. The old reactions of fear or guilt lose strength, and good begins to manifest without resistance. Troward said that mental reprogramming is like changing the foundation of a house while it is still standing. It requires patience, but the result is eternal. When the new structure is established, nothing shakes it. And the mind, now molded by consciousness of the whole, becomes an inexhaustible source of ideas, opportunities, and resources. At this point, prosperity ceases to be sought and begins to be simply lived. Thomas Troward said that the human mind is a universal multiplier. Everything it touches with faith expands, and everything it touches with fear contracts. Therefore, he warned that prosperity does not depend on what comes in, but on what one thinks about what comes in. A grateful mind transforms little into much. An anxious mind transforms much into little. The secret lies in the internal attitude. It is thought that defines the size of the harvest. He explained that the universe is like a magnifying mirror. It returns in amplified proportion what you project into it. If you project confidence, it multiplies opportunities. If you project doubt, it returns scarcity. There is no judgment, only exact response. Therefore, the true sage does not ask for more. He only elevates his vibration, and the universe obedient does the rest. Troward said, "What you keep in mind grows, because life is continuous expansion. This is the essence of the forgotten law. The mind creates and life amplifies. When you maintain a single thought of abundance with constancy and love, this energy multiplies and touches all areas: finances, health, relationships, and inner peace. Everything expands under the command of a consciousness that has learned its role, to be the source, not the request." Thomas Troward believed that the greatest miracle was not attracting wealth, but awakening the consciousness that makes it inevitable. When the mind understands the law, the struggle ceases. The person stops seeking prosperity and begins to express it, like the sun that does not need to ask permission to shine. The secret, he said, is to live in a permanent state of recognition. Recognize good, bless what you have, trust what will come. At this point, prosperity ceases to be a desire and becomes identity. You realize there is no lack because the universe is infinite. There is no fear because the law is perfect. There is no haste because everything is already in motion. The awakened mind understands that money, success, and opportunities are merely reflections of an illuminated consciousness. And now, as we close this message, remember, everything you think, feel, and believe converts into form. Abundance is your natural state. Scarcity is only forgetfulness. Remember every day that the universe does not respond to words, but to the vibration of faith. And as Troward said, good manifests when you recognize that it is already here. If this teaching touched your mind and your heart, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share this message. Each new awakened mind helps rekindle the flow of abundance in the world. Together we can transform consciousness into prosperity and prove that Troward's forgotten law still governs the wealth of those who know how to